and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Wargaming. I'm your host, Don Maidlow, and I have a special episode. I know I say this every single time there's a video, but this actually is a good one. I have two tournament organisers here, and we are going to spend the entirety of this video talking about terrain, talking about map packs. How do you get over the different challenges that prop up with the different changing metas? Like we've had night metas, we've had Wraith Knight metas, now we've got indirect metas. So it's going to be a good conversation about all that. So we have Mark from Winchester Roague Traders. He does a lot of events down south, and he, as well as Aaron, has his own style of terrain that he makes himself, and it's very interesting. When we're going to go into that in a bit. And then we've got Aaron from East Anglia Grand Tournament, where he has a lot of stuff in Norwich, and again. He has custom maps, custom terrain, and I've been to both of their tournaments, and I rate them highly because I had a great time at both of them, and it's always nice to play something that isn't just like UKTC or WTC or London Warhammer Open stuff. So yeah, this is the conversation. So hi guys, how you doing?
Doing well, yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, I kind of didn't give you guys a chance to respond to an intro, so let's just go into it. So I'll start with you, Mark. So your Winchester events, how long have you been doing them?
I ran my first one in May. Yeah, in May. I was a bit of lead up to it. I moved down here to Winchester last year because I was living up in Twickenham, and then I moved down here and I found a spot that I can actually run my tournaments, and I built up the terrain and enough terrain. So I ran my first one in May, and I've been trying to run them about every 6 to 8 weeks since.
Yeah, and you've kind of grown quite nicely as well, because you've got the Mind Goblins that come down quite regularly to your events. We've got to help our gobbos out, and they're great events. And I've been to one, and I found it quite interesting the first time I went, because I am traditionally a UKTC player, so I try and go to all of those events because they're big. And when you said about your terrain and how you're showing pictures in our chat about how you 3D printed them and all these different map packs, I was really intrigued by it. When not thinking, there you go, not thinking much of it, and I went and it was so nice to play on terrain that isn't just like scripted, like in every gaming shop you go to, all that sort of stuff. So I really enjoyed it. And then Aaron, you just had your first big event in the East Anglia Grand Tournament. So tell us a little bit about that.
So basically, in East Anglia, we didn't have a tournament scene about 18 months ago. Not a competitive one anyway. There were like local gaming stores were doing smaller ones. So we started the East Anglian Grand Tournament, and we based our scenery on the measurements of the UKTC because we knew that that's what competitive players were used to.
Yeah.
So we started the EAGT, which was 12 months worth of successful events, selling them out. Then Peterborough and Saffron Slam. I don't know if either of you guys have heard of those.
Yeah.
We decided we would do a collaboration event with them, which is what Dominic came to, and it's called EA Slam. And essentially what we had was two different types of competitive terrain, because Peterborough Slam used their own competitive terrain, EAGT used their own competitive terrain, and then the bottom 4 or 5 tables we had really high quality narrative terrain. Because we figured out a major tournament of like 60 plus players, if you're sitting at the bottom of the tournament, you might as well be playing on something pretty.
Yeah, nice, yeah.
And when it was
yourself.
when it was very, very dense, it's really dense. We made sure that even if round 1 you were paired onto those tables, that you weren't going to get shot off board 1. And there was absolutely no way that that could happen. So basically in East Anglia, we're more of a collaboration now. So I go to Peterborough Slam, Paul from Peterborough Slam comes to EAGTs in Norwich, and we try to run our events so that they don't clash, and we give each other enough space so that we can still sell tickets. So we're trying to grow the events in East Anglia.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And I was going to bring up about the narrative terrain, because my friend played it round 1 and he was worried because because he looked at the board straight away. I was just like, oh no, is this actually usable? And then he went there and he had a great game, like round one, and he was chuffed because he was playing orcs and he was pushing his buggies around. It was his first event, and he was actually chuffed that he managed to do so well in it, which was really good. But yeah. So can I ask you guys? So you, like Aaron, you just mentioned about like navigating so there's no clashes. How do you do that when there's so many like tournaments? Because like I guess you kind of have to navigate the big ones, the big super majors that are kind of out, which kind of bring all of the the big players to those events. Yeah, it must be quite hard to do.
I don't know. In East Anglia, obviously we're quite kept away from everything. There's no UKTC scene in Norfolk, Lincolnshire, Suffolk, or Cambridgeshire.
Yeah.
I mean, the closest one to Cambridgeshire is like Leicester, and then you've got like Birmingham and all that way. So it's not too far away from them, but especially like Norfolk and Suffolk, like who comes to Norfolk, right? That's the common thing across the country. We have no motorway to us. So the only people when it comes to like local events, we know that we will always have local players turn up to our events. So what the key was getting local players to not only come to our events, but to also go to Peterborough, and then also from Peterborough go to Saffron Slam. And we also have like 40k, which is in Colchester. That's not too far away from us either. So when we say about like navigating so we don't clash, essentially we have a group chat between the three major TOs, so like myself, Peterborough Slam and Saffron Slam, and we just say these are our dates, and we just try and avoid one another.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it.
Also because I play competitively as well, so does Paul. So
when
so we're getting our reps in, yeah. So I'm going to Peterborough in a couple of weeks to play their GT, which is sold out. He's coming to EA GT. So yeah, we kind of help each other out with that as well, because you know you can get pricey when you go into loads of events.
Yeah.
I was trying to explain to Peter where Winchester was, and he just kind of he couldn't explain it to me. It was too far south for him.
So Mark, how do you find navigating tournament dates?
Do you want the honest answer to that, or do you want me
Give me the podcast
answer? Do you want the nice answer?
And if it's too boring, I'll ask for the real
boring.
answer.
I mean, there's plenty of politics involved. I mean, you've been in a chat where I was talking about one particular incident I was navigating. So, for instance, I posted up. I sat down and did a bunch of analysis of all the tournaments in my local area plus UKTC. Now, UKTC hadn't actually put up most of their events for next year. So I kind of went, okay, well, same month, same week, same month, you know, blah, 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 and extended it out 12 months.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to post up all my tournaments for next year, just so I could block it out. So nobody could say I'm taking their tournament. So they knew that I was there, so that it would minimize clashes with the local tournaments. And so I sent 8 of my tournaments in after I published them on ITC, and got told that I couldn't put them on UKTC because they clashed with his unpublished events.
Oh, that's annoying.
I had exactly the same issue.
Yes, and he basically, we had a bit of a, shall we say, a discussion about that, and it's all my fault. But having said that, because I did actually ask him, I asked him for some advice on, you know, like, how do I avoid your tournaments? And he kind of said, well, I don't usually run another tournament within 2 weeks of this or 2 weeks of that. So I kind of went, okay, fine. That's not really an answer. So I kind of go, right, I'll just publish them out for the next 12 months. And in the end, out of my 8 tournaments next year, 2 of them have UKTC listings. The rest got rejected because of dates. We'll see what happens. He may yet relent. But anyway.
Yeah, I'm sure it will.
I had a similar issue. We had a tournament that just happened to fall on a UKTC event, and yeah, he wouldn't allow us to do it for UKTC posting either.
Canterbury Games had the same problem as well. So because he told me that he checked around with a bunch of different tournament organisers, and I went, let's fact check that. And out of 5 tournament organisers, one of them had basically been talked to, and one of them didn't answer. So I think he's just trying to be polite because he's a bit of a gent. So I mean, my last tournament we had basically one of the local tournaments up at Andover. Basically, moved their tournament from the weekend before onto my weekend.
It's like territory. It's weird.
Oh, God's
It's like
sakes.
gangs.
I literally, seriously, I mean, I published them out, and this is my tournament's been up for 3 or 4 months, right? And it's like everybody knows they're up there. I put them up there, right? 25 kilometers up the road, 25 minutes drive up the road, and you'd think, right? If you're trying to run a tournament, you're trying to maximize your own.
I feel like there should be just like one hub where both, but like all the tournament players can see all the events and then go, right, yeah, okay, cool.
Well, see, what I've done around that is I've actually put up on my website, winchesterrtt.com. There is actually an events where I've put all the UKTC stuff up that I knew about, and since he's published it today, I've actually gone and updated the events, where they are, basically. Plus anything within about 100 kilometers, 100 miles of here. I think it's about 100 kilometers of here, right? So anything that I know of that's within 100 kilometers of here, I'm also putting those up so that I can see, because I do it for my own benefit, so that I can actually try and avoid clashes. So I figure anything over 100 miles, or sorry, 100 kilometers or so, or 75 miles or something, whatever you think's a reasonable distance, is kind of getting to the point where, well, you know, it's fair enough. Who cares, right?
It's a different meta in that area anyway. Like, it'll be a completely different scene. They'll have their own local tournaments and that they'll go to. I completely agree, Mark. Any 75 to 100 miles. I only look as far as Peterborough. I don't go as far as Colchester because I know that they're within an hour and a half, 2 hour drive.
Yeah, well, it's kind of what I do as well, right? So and so I make a point of avoiding anything from Entoyment. I've made a point of trying to avoid anything that's in Andover. And there's anything else. I mean, like even with the London Open, I tried to avoid the London Open. I posted all my first tournament up, and my first 2 tournaments I put up in March, and then Zach during the first London Open in April last year put up his second London Open on the same weekend that I'd already posted mine up. His extra one, which he obviously just decided to do because the first one had been so good. Mind you, the second one he did was only 40 players, and I had 36, and I capped it at 36. So I think we cannibalized each other somewhat. So hence why I was emailing Zach to try and avoid this happening in the future, because neither of us wants it, right? And now, from what I can see, there's no London Open next year either.
So is that? Yeah, there is like the tournament, the TO Facebook page. I don't know. I assume, Mark, you're on there. I don't know. Well, Zach is on there, and there's several others.
Is there a TO? If there is, I haven't found it, so it could be that
I tell you what, Mark, we'll connect after the podcast, and I'll get you in, mate. But that's when, like, I've spoken to the guy from Canterbury, you know, and
Danny,
Zach, and Danny, what a gem. And it's really difficult. It's not like so it shouldn't be like a territory thing, because we're all in it for the same reason. We're just trying to. So this is why in East Anglia, like we all connected very early on, and we're like, let's try and work together, because the scene in East Anglia was dire. Whereas now we're home to like the 6++ gaming group, Sons of War gaming group now. My own
Canterbury Games not far away as well, is it? How far is Canterbury from you?
Oh, that's like 3 hours. That's quite far.
Because you got to come down into London to go back out again.
That's right. Yeah. And then I'm my own gaming team, which is Black Roague Gaming. We've expanded quite a lot as well. We're now 40 players strong across the south into East Anglia.
Damn.
So yeah, we've had a bit of a growth spurt.
Yeah. Oh wow, that's
That's
good,
great.
man.
Yeah,
it's nice to see all these new teams popping up, because like my local club decided to break ways from the club name, and they just decided to make their own one, and like 2 other teams are also forming as well, and I love it because they're all getting jerseys, because like I think it was Vanguard were the first ones to do the jerseys, and now everyone's got their jerseys. I've seen your new jersey, Aaron. You showed me, it was well good.
Yeah, so we've got some we've got loads of merch. So it just so happened that the guy who started Black Roague, he actually had a clothing line first.
That makes sense.
So we've got like
Elder by any chance?
No, he's a massive ginger bloke. So
I played somebody from Black Roague Gaming down at 40k Brawl a few months back. That's all.
Was it Simon by any chance?
I can't remember.
Laxton.
Yes.
Yeah, he's one of our guys as well. So yeah, he isn't a filthy Eldari player, but we got a couple of them in the team. Unfortunately, they do.
So am I.
exist.
So
You got it.
You guys got on then. How did the game go? Just let me know. So
it kind of came down to the last turn. I basically he was running out of troops and I was running out of time. So in the end, time won. So
That's a good way of putting it.
he's a good lad, Simon. But yeah, so Simon handles like our dice and our objective markers.
Yep. He gave me one of those, by the way.
Yeah, that's a Black Crow thing. We give one of our Black Crow dice away, and then Josh does all of our t-shirts, our beanies, our tote bags, everything. We're quite a well dressed group considering.
That's well good, man. Oh, I love that. I'm jealous. I need to get on it. We need to merch stuff, Mark. We do.
Well, yeah, we
are talking about it, to be fair.
We're talking about it. I'm trying to merch my own tournament stuff, and I'm trying to figure out how I can blend that with the team without, because I mean,
Black Crow dice. There you go.
Oh,
we've got Mind Goblins dice.
We do.
Multiple colours.
Yeah, I want new jerseys though. Because I've got ADHD, I get bored so easy. Oh, look at that. They're well nice. They're well.
Yeah.
Who did you use for that?
Oh, I'll have to speak to Simon about that. But he's
Can you get him to link me all of his stuff so I can then get stuff for Mind Goblins?
I can send you the link that I've got. I told you I've got a link.
Oh yeah, you got a guy, haven't you?
That's
we've all got guys. We've all got a guy or girl, depending on.
That could be anyone.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Anyway, enough about teams. Well, actually, so I want to talk about how you guys go about making terrain packs. So, I've always found it quite interesting how every single TO and every single event I've ever been to has completely different ways of making their terrain pack, and they're either stupidly ugly or too simple. And you guys, you're lucky because you're both in the middle where it's good.
Yeah.
So,
I'd be worried if it wasn't.
let's start with Aaron then. So Aaron, going about yours, because yours was how many people was the big event? We had
62 players.
62 players, and you had
two different types of terrain with two different maps. So Paul from Peterborough Slam sorted out his, and he again has a guy that does them. So the way I do mine is it helps if you played a game, right? Let's be honest. So I sit there, I have like a literal on my iPad, and I kind of do shapes, and I kind of work out where I want to place it. I have the terrain at home and I kind of play with it. Don't always get it right straight away. Sometimes you have to do some changes. And then I go to my pal who literally lives around the corner to me, who is a graphic designer. And I just literally say, look, mate, if I give you some beer, will you make these look pretty? And
that's a good way of doing it.
I was wondering how you did that, because I that's one of the things I kind of, I wouldn't say struggle with, but that was one of the things I was like, well, how do I do this? But I figured out a way now. It's dirty, but it works, right?
Yeah, it's hard work. Like, I don't think people realize as a TO, and Mark, I imagine you probably feel the same way. We spend hours looking at these maps.
Yeah, to be fair, I kind of get off on it.
I mean, in your own time.
Well, in my. I mean, so I mean, I'm not sure if I'm jumping in there before you finish, but I mean, for me, I mean, I come from years of playing semi-professional paintball, so working angles and shooting lanes and things like that it's kind of second nature to me. So whenever I look at these things, I mean, everybody's got a different way of looking at it. I mean, like, I'll sit down and I'll pull my terrain out, and I've got a map with a 1-inch grid on it, a 60 by 44 grid map, and I basically lay out the terrain and I lay out the mission, and then I'll basically look at the board and I'll start placing pieces of terrain where I think, looks like they'll get decent coverage on the board, and then I start adjusting them a little bit here, a little bit there, until I think it's right. And then, sometimes I'll get a bit of commentary comes back to me. So where someone will say, I think that's a bit too much of a firing lane or whatever, and then I'll adjust it a little bit. Usually I don't have to do too much in the way of adjusting it. And that's generally how I'll do it. And then once I've got it laid out the way I want, I just stand on top of a chair, a chair right above me, and I'll basically bang my head on the roof and take a photo from above. And then I basically print it out, and then I basically get the pen out and start drawing lines and saying, this is 16 inches, that's 14 inches, and that's whatever. And that's kind of how I do my map layouts. And from my perspective, it's actually the simplest way of doing it, because as soon as I think it's right, I can just take a photo of it, print it out, and then all I do is sit down and write it up. I mean, and that works quite quickly for me. And initially I was I was doing it all on the map with was the removable marker, the non-permanent pens, because they're supposed to come off, right?
No, the whiteboard
half
one,
an hour, 45 minutes scrubbing the hell out of it, trying to get the damn marking, the whiteboard marker off, and then hence removing the lines. So after a while, it started to get a bit bare in a few patches, and I've since come up with a slightly better method for that. But it's right now, rather than actually doing it on the map, I actually do it on the photocopy, so it's quite simple to sit down and draw the lines up. And if I make a mistake, I can just reprint it and redo it. That's that's dirty, but it works, right?
Yeah. Simple but effective. But
so one thing I wanted to bring up as well, like worth noting. So when we went into EA Slam, there was something really clear we wanted to do. So both me and Paul were talking because we were doing our maps and we were sharing, and we wanted them to be similar but not the same. Which you would have seen, Dom, when you played at EA Slam, like the two very different types, but they were in similar positions. And what was one thing we both did is those 4 maps that we had can now be played we don't have to change them.
Yeah.
All you have to do is put new missions and new deployments, but the deployments and the missions work for every single map.
That's interesting. Because your boards are quite heavy, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it means,
how many pieces of terrain do you have on a board?
So 12.
Yeah, same with mine.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, 12. Yeah.
Because I've updated mine since you last played on it, Dom, as well.
I'm actually looking at both your terrain packs.
So if you now put any mission to any one of those, and we deliberately tested it with the object, because now the objectives doesn't matter where they're placed, because it doesn't matter with the scenery, covering them or not. It meant that we were able to have a little bit more freedom with that. So it means that each map can have hundreds of different options due to the cards. So it meant that for a tournament provider, it's made our lives a million times easier, because I can just be like, right, it's this map, but it's this mission, and you'll get a completely different game every time.
So this might be actually quite good to ask then. So your terrain is very, like, they're all on rectangles, so it's easier to kind of cut angles and kind of place, because like, it's obscuring. No matter what the angles are, it's going to be like that. And then with yours, Mark, yours aren't on the big rectangular bases, so I guess that's why it's kind of easier to be more adaptable with the big rectangular bases. But Mark, how do you find the I guess, I don't know.
So every one of my pieces has got a base. So I mean, I basically I found a guy, and it was the first one who actually responded to me, and we worked together to build, like I said, I like that, I like that, I like that, and I like that, but none of it's got bases on it. Can you please put bases on it for me, and then make it this size and this size and this size and this high? And he went, yeah, fine. And I was like, okay, I've been trying to get someone to do this for 9 months, right? No response. And this guy goes, yeah, fine, I'll do it. And so we basically worked together, and we got the terrain. So I mean, that's just one piece. I mean, so I liked this aesthetic with it. So and that's just like me throwing a zenithal on it. The whole table takes me about 20 minutes to half an hour to do a whole table in paint it, right?
Oh, that's it.
And it takes me all of 10 minutes to put it together, because that's 2 pieces of 3D printed terrain. All right.
3D printed. So
all my terrain's 3D printed. So I've been on a mad printing spree. So
it makes it a lot more affordable if you're doing it by yourself, I guess, because
it is. I mean,
you just kind of hit print and go, and once you've got a good remedy, it's kind of off you go.
Yeah. So everything I do, it's me, right? So I've painted every piece of this terrain. I've got 62 tables. Sorry, 31 tables worth and some bits and pieces I'm waiting to get some extra terrain bits for. So I've got 31 completed. I've just finished building 20 tables, so I can basically just throw it in the back of the van and go, because I've got a RTT I'm running in Teddington in December. The boards for the top of the tables, so just in case the tables aren't quite flat, so always make sure that the table mats, I've just printed up a bunch of stuff with with this sort of thing on it, and logos and all the rest of it on it, my terrain mats and all the rest of it. So I've had those all printed up. So everything I've done is literally, other than, even with the design of the 3D printing to some extent, I've been the one who's done it. So I've had to make it as simple and as kind of DIY friendly as I can. So even this one, was not the original one that I bought. The original one I bought had like a kind of this dropped down here like this.
Yeah.
And when Towering came out,
and
I'm playing Wraith Knights, right? So I know just how bad it was. So when Towering came out, and my way of dealing with that was that I basically got 2 lots of terrain, and I said, if 2 of these pieces of terrain are touching each other in the mission pack, right, then they're considered one wall. But even with that, like even with this cutout that was on there, or the original cutout that was on there, with a Wraith Knight, you can stand it behind the wall, but basically, half an inch to this way, half an inch that way, and basically there's no cover. Or you might get benefit of cover, but you can still see it, right? And that's how I kind of got around it. But the problem with when we did that was that obviously that all the terrain kind of came back in towards the center, and the outside of the board kind of got neglected, and it pretty much wasn't usable. I'm not sure if I'm going off on a tangent we should be talking about later on, but
that's fine. It's fine. Because the thing that I've always been like worried about, because I've always wanted to do events. I think it's a real fun thing to do, and if and when I do them, the one thing that always worried me was getting the terrain, like how to do it. I know 3D printing's like a good way of doing it, because like you just said, but like Aaron, what do you do for your terrain?
So originally we had a friend of the gaming club that we all went to, and he just used spare wood, and he just literally, we were just like, these are the measurements, can you do something simple that is just easy, it doesn't need to look fancy, it just needs to be usable. And yeah, this guy did us 40 players worth, so 20 tables worth. As we expand, we have a Kickstarter that we're now supporting, which I'll send you, and you can pop in there.
I'll put it down below, yeah.
And they're doing some MDF terrain that comes with like pre-painted, and they're doing TO packs. So we're following that, and we're probably going to add that to our repertoire of terrain, simply because we think actually having different types of competitive terrain at a tournament and alternate might be the way to go forward as a provider. So we talked about it literally tonight, actually. I think having it literally alternating tables like we did at EA Slam is probably the best format we have ever seen, because no matter what, it's very difficult to necessarily write a list for an all-comer for all different types of terrain.
Yeah.
Which then made it more based on the pilot rather than just the meta. Because we were finding Eldar players were getting done in by Space Marines, and Space Marines at the time didn't have their codexes, and that was just down to like the different types of terrain.
You get caught out if you're used to just like one type of terrain. Like just going to UKTC events. I mean, they're great, but like if you just play them, then you just are like used to these specific firing lanes. And going to like your guys' events, it's nice because it's totally different and it's a new challenge. And it keeps you sharp as well.
I think like Mark probably agrees as well. Like having different types of terrain to what everybody is used to just makes it more appealing for us as a tournament provider. It means people come to us and they know that we're going to give them a different challenge to what they would have got at a UKTC event. The thing is about UKTC, and he's done very, very well, and we can't take anything away from him. He has got several hundred people every month committing to go to these tournaments, and that's levels of people going to a tournament that me and Mark could only ever dream of. You know, at this point, that's not just like a hobby, which it probably is for me and Mark, where it's, you know, it's not enough to fund us, but so we work full time. But for them, it's now a full-time job.
Yeah, that's true.
Incredibly impressive.
Well, with Zach, it is a full-time job.
Yeah,
and I think he only flies back in the country to do it. So because he's off building some farmstead in bloody northern Italy, which I'm kind of jealous about, really.
I mean, fair enough to the guy. Like, what an absolute achievement. He paved the way, but I think the way forward, personally, is to have varying terrain.
Yeah.
And if we want to make it so that UK is the best hub for Warhammer tournaments on the planet, then we need to make sure.
Which
it is.
Well, it is. Yeah.
Let's better. The team said it itself.
Let's face it. Like, say the US, right? You've got how many players, but to get to a tournament, a decent sized tournament or like that, you have to travel, 1,000 miles to get to it, right? Here, I mean, like, I know everybody here in this country seems to think like 100 kilometers is like, a 5-day drive.
2 hours. No, I can't be bothered.
You should have seen how
45 minutes is how far we drive to have coffee. But here, it's 45-minute drive. Oh my God, that's too far. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's just me showing my Antipodean roots. I 100% agree with you, Aaron, because there's so much UKTC terrain out there that basically it's become the default terrain. Everybody's using it, right? Yeah. And now even other new tournament organizers are just picking it up and they're just running with the same formats and the same mission packs.
Or Glasshammer as well, because it's Glasshammer terrain. That's
okay, fair enough. Yep, and the GW stuff as well, right? But I've played on the GW stuff once.
That's because it's way expensive to get a hold of.
No, well, actually, no. This was another one. It wasn't actually
like
GW. No, there was no Perspex. It was actually someone had kind of done the same idea, but it wasn't on Perspex. And I got to say, it was bloody terrible. But that was just my experience of it. Again, I also played Martin with his indirect guard list.
Oh yeah, that's why it was rubbish, because you couldn't do anything. Just hide his entire army behind like 2 bits of perspex.
Yeah, never mind. Anyway, of course, on the long board, never mind. Anyway,
I actually love the Games Workshop terrain, and not the actual bits of terrain that go on top. Like TOs can put whatever they want, it's fine. I really like the layouts they have. I actually think they work, because I played on them 3 times at Hellstorm Wargaming at the 6-round event, and I thought they were the most even, because there were no firing lanes anywhere, which meant you actually had to like I was trying to hold objectives in the middle with like a Forge Fiend. Like, it really made for like weird gameplay, and the maps kind of rotated like that, so it like mixing it up in an event is quite nice, just to have like a different thing. But I tell you one that I did struggle with. That was player placed, and I played it round 1, and I screwed it up straight away. So, what do you guys think of player placed? Do you think it should be maybe your event should have 1 round of?
There was a loaded question. It's just what a amazing idea you've come up with.
I know. It's like
where did you come up with that? Yeah, you may have guessed this has kind of come up pre-chat, but because we had a chat in the Mind Goblins chat the other day about it, and some people in the Mind Goblins chat absolutely panned it. I mean, I was like sitting there going, well, you know what? I didn't really like it that much, the idea of it when they first started. I kind of panned it when I hadn't played it, but then I went and played it at Bournemouth last year and actually really enjoyed it.
I quite like it, but I always screw it up.
It just adds another skill to it, doesn't it? It's another layer of skill.
If you're used to it, it's great. But if you're not, it's like,
well, yeah. If you're not,
but you put a massive big thing in the middle, and then you screw yourself.
I think everybody's big issue seems to be with it, that it actually creates this skill gap between new players and experienced players. But I mean, you could say the same thing about playing UKTC, right? Because if you just play UKTC and on the terrain, you've done nothing but practice on that terrain, and there's going to be a massive skill gap between the person who's just joined and playing their first UKTC tournament and somebody who's a UKTC regular. So it's kind of a, it's a bit of a piss poor argument as far as I'm concerned. But it does it. I can understand their point of view, because at the end of the day, though, if someone's got half a brain in their head, they can go, well, you know what? Depending on what list I'm playing, I can have an aggressive layout, or I can have a defensive layout. And I can pretty much show up to all 5 games of a tournament knowing roughly, basically, this is how I'm going to lay it out. I can have it mapped out in my head and have my deployment already worked out before I even come to the table. Because at the end of the day, I'm placing the train, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And if I've got two rough layouts, I can kind of know that I want to do this aggressively, and I don't want to do this aggressively. But I mean, the idea I kind of floated to you is maybe we should just do like a round 4 of a GT, where we just have one round, which is player placed terrain, because then we're just throwing kind of another set of rocks in everybody's pond, right?
So I think there's a way you get around that kind of that. So you mentioned very early on that you think it would make too much of a divide between your new starters, newcomers to your tournament, and those who come regularly. Yeah. And something we did at an EAGT was actually I sent out sort of the tournament pack, but then I sent out an FAQ PowerPoint. And what I did is that I took photos of common things that people don't understand or they don't know how to navigate. And I had like examples, so I had my models on there, and I was giving them examples of how you deal with scenarios.
Yeah.
And so essentially what I did was to try and help build up the competency of players in our area, was be like, look, this is how this is intended to work. And this is how you would expect it to work at other tournaments. And I think if you did something like that with your player placed and just sent it out, you don't have to do it as like
a dummy guide, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with giving people kind of like a general idea of, look, this is what's going to be your round 4, this is how you do it, and then you're already giving people the tool, so then they can't complain that we don't do this enough, we're not very good, or there's just no, that you just take away that element, and I think it just.
I mean, I still think the whole argument is piss poor, because at the end of the day, like I said, I mean, if you play nothing but UKTC and they've never played UKTC, there's going to be a massive skill gap. If you play on TTS every night, no names mentioned, right, and the other guy doesn't, there's going to be a massive skill gap. And the only way that you're ever going to bridge that skill gap is to actually give people in the situation where they're going to do that, or put people in a situation where they're actually adjusting to different types of terrain on a regular basis, so that actually different terrain formats, or maybe laying out their own terrain formats, kind of just is just the next logical step in how that happens. I don't think that running player placed terrain as a regular thing like they do in the US a lot, I think to me it's just lazy TOing. Right?
I actually agree with you. I think it is lazy TO. I think they've basically got a hodgepodge of random stuff, and then they go deal with it. This is what it is. Because I've seen some of them on War Games Live where he basically has like a shoebox, and it's like covered in like just some like random paint. It's like you get a shoebox, you get a can, you get this and that, and then they make it work because they have to place it. They have to place it and play Warhammer. But like, you don't want to do that.
No, I think there's definitely a gulf in standard, and I think it's definitely more evident in the US than in the UK. With their tournaments, because like we said, it's so vast in size, whereas here the tournaments are now all kind of trying to keep up with one another and what we do to make it interesting, to make it different, to make it relevant. I went to a tournament just the weekend gone. It was a local gaming store. It was their first competitive ITC ranked tournament, and they literally just used the terrain they had, which arguably is the most difficult tournament to go to, because you have no idea what you're going to come up against. You have no idea what level of terrain you're going to have, and you have no idea how much cover you're going to have. And they were very clever how they fixed it. They said, look, assume that all ground floor is line of sight blocking, and all ruins are infinitely tall.
Well, I mean, that's the rules anyway, but
no, what they meant, no.
Oh, okay, just assume.
So all ruins. So not just if it was under 4 inches, it was under 4 inches. Okay. As in, all ruins was infinitely tall.
Yeah.
So basically, it was just like beams everywhere.
Wow.
So see, that's part of the reason that.
But it worked.
Well, yeah. So it's part of the reason that I wanted to basically run tournaments. Partly is because I went to a couple of tournaments that were just. Well, you just run into things at tournaments where you've had something happen and you just go, that should never have happened. I mean, that's just ridiculous that would happen. And this is how I would do it. I mean, like it's that kind of, you kind of sit there, people are saying, well, you put your money where your mouth is. And for me, this is putting my money where my mouth is, right? I'm not armchair quarterbacking. I mean, I'm sitting there saying, well, I'm doing it, right? And I want to run it properly. And I want to, and the thing is, I think the part of the problem is this, also the UK being small, there's lots and lots of small tournaments popping up. And a lot of them kind of tend to fizzle out because they go about it half-assed. I mean, and I've spent a fair bit of money, and I guarantee you spent a fair bit of money making sure I get the right things for this tournament, and so it's done properly. And also helps to have a good player base. I mean, I've got the local group here, and like the Hampshire Hammerers, and this is a shout out to them because, as I said to them after my last GT, that they're probably the best group I think that a TO could hope to have in the local area, because they're just a great bunch of guys. They're fully supportive, and they've got a great attitude to everything. I mean, you get all these ring-ins coming in, Dom, winning the tournament, and and the thing is, they're just taking it as a learning experience, and they just know that they basically got to up their game. So come rain, hail, or shine, these guys are signing up for the tournaments every time. They're getting better. They're looking to find ways to do stuff. But I mean, so I think that's part of it. That's part of the luck of it. But I think the other part of it really does come down to terrain. Everybody and every man and their dog is just going after UKTC terrain, or now they're starting to go down the GW route.
Easier, because if you just got all you need is little perspex, and you just cut them out, and then you can kind of put whatever you can. If you want to cut them out of foam, you can do it. So that's easy.
So the first really, and the first really bad tournament, I don't know if I should mention the name, but I already have in another podcast. But it was like I went 4-0 with my 8th edition Eldar, right, at Warfare 2021. And I'd played 3 or 4 games with Planet Bowling Ball, and again I ran into Martin.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, right. Playing Drakari at the start of 9th, right? So, so it was Planet Bowling Ball, and all we had in the middle of the table was forest, right? And I went first, and I managed to do like 1.5 wounds to something, and then then Martin pretty much killed everything. So I went from basically dropping 3 points in 4 rounds to scoring 19 points in one game, right? And to be fair, Martin was fairly drunk. Not drunk, sorry, that's not true. He wasn't drunk. Let's just say he was a little ill at the time, and he still smashed me. Right? That for me was like, after having played 2 or 3 other games on Planet Bowling Ball, I was just like, and I think actually their tournament attendance since is kind of been a good indication of how well that went down. I could be wrong. I mean, they got it again this coming up in the next week or so. Anyway, so I mean, maybe they've picked up their game on that regards. But
I mean, you got to with the new 10th edition rules, because terrain's completely changed since 9th edition. So you can't really have like these random like coke cans or trees everywhere, because they kind of don't do anything. You got to have these massive line of sight blocking terrain pieces, which like your events like both do. Like Mark, I've always really liked your the massive triangle buildings, because they actually do quite well at hiding a bunch of models but still give you firing lanes. And the same for you, Aaron. Nothing for yours. I've always liked the massive bits in the middle that you put, which you also put in the deployment center as well. Yeah, that's the one. They're huge, but they also work for a lot of armies. Like Knights love them. I mean, Chaos Knights love to run through them. Not fun to play that. But yeah, it's good to have that sort of like sizable terrain. So how have you guys found the transition from like maybe starting events towards the end of 9th to the new rule pack that came out, and like you had to suddenly, I mean, I don't know if you have, but you rebuilt a lot of your map, perhaps, Aaron?
So the guy who I was doing the tournaments with, he had like a mild panic attack.
Oh, no.
And I was just like, I hadn't had a look yet, and then I had a look, and I was like, "What are you worried about?" He's like, "What do you mean?" I was just like, "All of our terrain's on bases, so it doesn't matter." And
Yeah.
he's like, "Are you sure? Are you Aaron? Are you like?" He literally was like, "Aaron, are you 100% sure that we're okay and that we're not? It's not going to be. We're going to have to change everything." And I was like, "I need to do new maps, but that we don't need to change the scenery. The scenery's fine. Like we don't need to do anything because we got them all on bases anyway to make our lives easier." And that was the best decision we made when we had it all ordered anyway. We made sure it was all on large base scenery to make sure that we were covered. The only bits we didn't have on scenery was kind of like our scout. We call them like our throwaway. They don't mean anything. They're like little barricades. So we have like a 3-inch size wall which you can hide infantry behind and like marines and things like that. So like that sort of mid-size infantry, but they're not designed to be anything other than you can park something there if like you've got like 2 man left and you need to like hold an objective and stuff like that, you know. So we were very fortunate, and then obviously I just liaised with the other TOs in East Anglia, and then that's when we came up with the idea that we wanted to have all of our maps so that they could literally, we don't have to design them again, and we can just draw the cards and we'll give everyone a different game in different scenario. So it actually worked in our favor, thank God.
Yeah, I've been trying towards that, but I haven't yet run a tournament, 2 tournaments in a row that are using the same layout. I've literally had to do the map pack every time. I might have got away with one RTT, but every one of them has been different because I've had to change it because my first one was at the end of 9th, so that was fine. And then the next one was the start of 10th, middle of July, and we had towering. So how I got around with that, I just pushed a lot of stuff together to basically, to create massive like line of sight blocking walls. But again, as I said before, that creates issues on the outskirts of the thing, or it creates big gaps in your terrain, so that massive firing lanes. So you kind of have to you kind of got to work around that. But since then, towering's become less of an issue. I changed I modified my my terrain so that literally now I've got at least one of these on each side of the board, on as well as the other bit, which is just as tall as that, but it's only half of that, but I mean, and you saw the other triangular bit as well, right? So I've got enough line of sight blocking stuff on there to do that. But I keep changing. I've been modifying the terrain, and like each time. So I modified that one there. So I had like a 10-inch high basically piece of terrain, which is 8 inches wide and 10 inches high across. The latest one is this one, which is the 3-inch high wall.
Yeah.
So basically, I've got it locally. I've got a designer who basically did this for me. He's working on another one for me. It's a little shrine thing I'm going to do. So, and you notice it, right? It's an inch thick. And it's not a ruin, it's actually a debris terrain or something like that. So you can basically shoot over top of it. So it doesn't block line of sight, but it's 3 inches tall and it's got sidewalls on it. You can't
very
fight
similar
through
to
it.
what we do. Yeah.
It's an inch thick, so you can't fight through it. The only way you can only kind of go over or around it. So it creates an interesting thing. So if someone's just used to basically dropping in troops 9 inches away and say, I'll charge that, they can't do it, because if someone's standing on the other side of it, you add on all the extra distance, it's not chargeable.
I like that.
So I've got 2 of those now, and I want to add another piece in the new year. And I actually thought, part of me was thinking that would be the perfect piece to have on a player place terrain set, because it's basically a shrine which is 7 inches tall and about 7 inches wide, and you can sit that on the middle of the board, on the middle objective, and just say, okay, so if your player place terrain is, you can't have anything within 5 inches of anything else, and it's got to be on your side of the board. You don't have somebody sitting there going, I've just claimed half the board. The board.
That's the problem with player placed.
Yeah. So, but if you can actually, if you've got a centerpiece already there, and they can't put anything within 5 inches of it, that kind of negates that issue, I think, to a large extent.
Yeah. So because we can chat about this for ages, and there is a time limit on this podcast because otherwise I won't be able to upload it. I'm just going to do some just quick fire questions, and then at the end we'll kind of like go through your events, and then we can tell everyone where to find you all. But yeah, so Aaron, talking about player placed, if you were to introduce it into your map pack, would you do you think that round 4 is the right round to do it?
You know what? Actually, as soon as Mark said that, I thought that's a great idea, and I'm going to give him complete props for that, because I think if we are going to introduce it into a UK scene, that is 100% the best way to do it, because it won't ruin anyone's tournament, but it will make it so that the tournament is more difficult. So,
and it gives them the night before to have a think about it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Mark, when we were talking about this before, as soon as you said that, I was like, that is the best way we're going to do it. That is the best way to do it. And I'd be very interested, if you do pilot it, to hear the feedback.
I think you should, Mark. I honestly think like your terrain is like perfect for it, because there's so many different bits. So I think I will come down and try it out as well. But I'll run something like Drukhari.
I mean, it wouldn't be difficult to do either. It's like, because we don't need to design a map. All we'd need to do is put it into and they say mission 4 is this, but it's player placed.
Yeah.
And they've already played 3 games on the terrain, right? By that time as well. Yeah, so they know the terrain. Right.
Yeah, 100%. Very good.
Nice. Yeah. So Mark, if you were to implement player place, then is there anything else that you would think about?
Well, yeah, I think the other thing as well is, like I said, I'd probably try and put a centerpiece on. I know GW say you're not supposed to put stuff on the middle objective, but I mean, first of all, LGT does it.
It's your event also,
and it's my event. So they also say you're not supposed to move over. You're not allowed to move onto the middle of the objective marker as well. So this is from them, right? So sorry, I shouldn't be that dismissive. So yes, I mean, that to me would be the starting point. You just have a piece in the center, which basically forces people. They can't just kind of go, right, I own the center of the board. Because the idea is you've got to have like 4 or 5 inches between each. It'd probably have to be 5, because I think there's too many bits that have got sponsons on them which wouldn't be able to move through it otherwise.
Yeah. So we have a thing when we did our maps. We had a minimum of 4 and 6. That's kind of like the rule. So every certain pieces of maps where we designed them to be choke points, we kept them at 4 so that large vehicles couldn't get through. And then we made it deliberately so that you could get larger vehicles. So if you have a look at the maps, Dom, you'll see that there's bits that are deliberately closer together, and they're only 4 inches apart, and that is to force it so that heavy vehicles can't just come through and just dominate the center.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because I mean, I still think I would find it so hard to like make a map pack. I mean, you guys have done it for a while now, but
I've done it for every tournament.
So
that's what I used to do. All the ones in 9th were all designed.
But the thing is, because of the way I do it, it's not that big a deal for me to do that. And I've got all the old maps. If I want to go back and use them, I can just go back and use them again. But I mean, the next one in January, hopefully I'm going to have another terrain piece. And so they're all going to change again. I will actually be trying to use I've got a Teddington event December 17th, which I'm going to use, I think, the first 3 missions. I haven't just quite decided yet, but it'll probably be the first 3 missions from my last GT in October. So I'll reuse it a little bit, but it's still going to, the one after that, it'll change again. But I kind of like the fact that it changes a bit too, because, it keeps it fresh. And yes, and of course, at the end of the day, my goal was to do exactly what Aaron's talking about, and that's just I can have a static map, and if I'm feeling lazy, I'll just go, right, use these cards.
Yeah, well, my favorite events are always the ones where there's something different going on. Like it's why I personally really like Hellstorm Wargame events, because there's like 6 different map layouts, and you cannot tailor like your lists. Like I know if I go to like a UKTC event, I'll literally just write a list for that terrain. So it's nice to like switch it up. Okay, so we've talked a lot about all these events and your experiences with them. So Aaron, where can people find your events, and what have you got coming up?
So you can find our events in both Peterborough and in Norwich. We are both on Peterborough Slam, which is on Facebook, and East Anglian Grand Tournament, which is on Facebook. And if you want to go for our collab event, that's East Anglian Slam, and that's where each Saffron Slam we all come together and we do a group tournament. And that was the atmosphere of that day was amazing because we had so much going on. I was literally sprinting up and down all day, just giving people drinks.
Cold as well on the hot day though it was.
Yeah, that was busy.
Well,
So
I wouldn't give to have a second TO like floating around like me.
yeah, we were lucky. There were so many of us that one of ours was able to play. But anyway, yeah. So you can we're our next tournament, which is the 18th, 19th, is sold out. That is in Peterborough Slam. We've got another one in November 25th, 26th. That's East Anglian Grand Tournament. There's only a few tickets left for that, and that's a 40-man event. We've then got our Peterborough Slam. We've got a teams event in December, which is a 5-man teams event coming, and that's the 9th and 10th weekend. So that should be a good one. And then in the new year, we'll be releasing dates very soon.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's quite cool that you're doing team events because they're become a lot more popular now. I know. Me and Mark did a team event. Was it this year?
Birmingham.
Yeah, Birmingham. It was really fun, but because it gets like the whole group together and everything like that.
So yeah. Since the growth of with the Black Roague growth, and Mark has had the pleasure of playing one of our guys. We're now actually taking 4 teams to Birmingham in May.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Wow. You're gonna have different coloured jerseys, or all the same?
We're gonna have all the jerseys. So
nice. That's cool.
You'd have to have slightly different colours for each team, right?
Yeah, well,
Rambo headbands like red.
So on our podcast, the Black Roague Gaming YouTube site, we have talked about how we plan for an ITT and how we've decided we're going to do it. And currently, we're not going to try and make a team that have all got podium wins or been podiumed. So we're actually just going to split all of the skill base across all of it because we think it'll be way more fun. And ultimately, in a teams, you need attackers, defenders, and then the winger, right?
You do.
So
you need a wild card.
Yeah, you could literally just go through and have your 2 players who literally smash and get on podiums. You can have your 2 sort of middle, and you can have, your wild card as well, who you can throw in and hopefully do well. So Black Roague Gaming are going to be well represented next May. Maybe we'll even get a 5th team.
Oh, so many.
Yeah.
You're gonna have the monopoly of all the players.
Well, our plan is to definitely grow, and basically just create a community where people who are kind of out there without any team, who want to just literally chew the fat on lists and know that they're gonna be a part of a team that actually care, and it's more like a well-being as well as the community. Yeah. And that's why we're based across. So we're in Norfolk, Ipswich, Reading, Devon, and Dorchester. So we're spread all the way across like the south coast. But I will travel down to Plymouth to meet up with these guys and play a game, and they'll travel up to us. And that's the relationship we've now built. Which is, if anybody's out there looking at teams, get yourself into a team. It's the best thing to do.
It is. You get a lot of a big support network, and yeah, it's really good. So Mark, where can people find your events in the country, and also where?
Well, where is it? So if somebody points their camera at that,
yeah,
excuse the dinner. That's my son. Winchester Roague Traders. Well, I can't do that back to front. Whatever. So Winchester Roague Traders, WinchesterRTT.com. That has all my events on it. It also has my mission packs, my FAQs, tournament packs explaining the times and details. It's going to have the winners circle up on there soon, so your name will be up on there at some point, Dom. I just got to pull my finger out and actually do it. It also has an events calendar with most of the UKTC stuff and stuff in the local area as well. And if anybody wants to get their tournament added to that, just send me an email. That's winchesterrtt@gmail.com, and I'll add you to that. I'm not trying to put everything on there. I'm just trying to put anything that's relevant, so I avoid clashes.
Yeah.
I've just had my October one, GT. Next one is actually in Teddington, and it sold out today. So I found 4 more seats, and so I've just released those, and one of those or 2 of those have already gone. And the next GT in Winchester is going to be in January, January 27th and 28th. That's the last weekend of the ITC. So hopefully anyone who's looking to shore up their ITC points for the end of the year or the start of the year. It's also UKTC registered as well. That's one of the ones that Zach gave me, I believe.
No.
So that's my next big tournament, and hopefully I'll have a nice new terrain pack and a nice new piece of terrain. I'll be selling probably. Hopefully I'll have terrain packs I can start selling soon, because at the moment I have the rights to print this terrain but not sell it. But I've got there's a new designer in town, and I'm working with him. So hopefully we'll have whole packs we can sell, so if people want to get a hold of it. I'll also be selling my
That's
mats.
something that I'd be very interested in, Mark. We, as I said, we believe the way forward is to have lots of different types of terrain at an event. So definitely want to get involved in that when that's ready, mate.
Yeah, and also the mats, all the terrain mats, because
Your mats are well good.
And the point of the terrain mats as well is, again, because I designed them so that they're close to having a 10-inch. You can see where the 10-inch border is and the 18-inch border on the long edge, and where the center of the table is.
Stuff on it already.
So the idea is kind of half. It's kind of half done for you, or at least close. I'm struggling a little bit at the moment to get the measurements exactly 10 and 18, but it's pretty close. But the center is obviously pretty obvious too. But anyway, so I'm also looking at possibly running a teams event in March. The only problem with that is it does actually clash with the Manchester UKTC event. So I'm not sure how I'm going to go with that, but we'll see.
Well, you're gonna have Black Roague, and they've got like 7 teams.
Well, if I have a 3-man event, they can have 20.
It'll be just a Black Crow event.
I tell you what, to be fair, I just quickly, whilst we were talking, had a look on the map, and you're very close to a big proportion of our players. So theoretically, we could probably get 2 or 3 teams down to you.
Well, I'm sure the Hampshire Hammerers would love that. And I should also give a shout out to the Southampton Sluggers as well, because they've been supporting by like the Astropathic Choir, the regulars showing up as well. So but yeah, so I think that's it for me. I've probably rambled on and way too much. But Dom.
Nah, you guys have been great. Thanks for coming on. So yeah, all of the details will be below for these events. So make sure you check out the map packs and their websites, and get involved in any of the events that you can make. Team events are always great. They're both going to be running them, and they've got events coming up. Tickets will be there. Yes, Mark.
So just as a point, if somebody feels their local area is underserviced and they want to run an RTT, okay, I can run theoretically on a day probably 62 players on a day. So if somebody has got an area and they've got somewhere they think they can run it or whatever, give me a yell. I'm open to running, just do a random raid on some community center and running a RTT. So I've got the terrain. I might as well use it.
Yeah. That's a good shout, to be fair, because I'm sure there's places where people don't really think about doing it. So yeah. So give Mark a shout. Also give Aaron a shout as well, both of them for their tournaments and everything like that. But hopefully this was helpful for anyone thinking about running events, looking at events and everything like that. And everything will be below. Please subscribe if you've lasted this long. And we will catch you next time. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Bye.